Blog Talk Radio.
It's time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend. Back in the haunted cabin of Spaced Out Studios is your host, James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR, Facebook him at Spaced Out Radio Show, or call in live at 1-607-203-5344. Now back in his crickety captain's chair, here's Spaced Out Weekend host, James Tyson.
Thank you, Dave, and welcome back, everyone, to another Spaced Out Weekend. It's me, James Tyson, still broadcasting from my little log cabin on the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network, located in the paranormal portals of the lower left Canadian coast. And tonight with us, we have the amazing Amanda Springer. She was raised in Illinois and loves being in the outdoors, camping, deer hunting, going to the range, paintball wars, hiking, drag races, and yeah, I think I'll just go hang out with her because she sounds really, really cool. Her first book was written in fourth grade in a scholarship competition. Okay, she didn't win that contest, but she learned that she loved to write. She had been an Army wife for 12 years, a member of the Military Writers Society of America and American Legion, Illinois Author Association, and member of ASMSG. In 2005, Amanda founded the SCI-OGH Paranormal Investigation team that still exists and is very active today. It's out in Illinois. She has been in countless newspapers, on television, discussing her books. She is well known for donating copies of her books to the troops overseas and helping military families during times of deployment. She has received 2 certificates of appreciation for the United States Army and has been a guest at several schools in her area with kids who like to write. She visits book and poetry clubs. She's a former police officer, a firefighter involved with drinking driving simulations and suicide prevention teams. She has done it all. This is Amanda Springer, and we want to bring her in here because she has written some very cool books. One of the books that she has written is Investigating the Paranormal, along with a haunted diary. You know, this is the diary of her ghost hunting team's exploits, and a ghost hunter's handbook. Again, she writes a lot of fiction too. She does anything, a lot of it's military based, a lot of it is poems, and so we can talk to her about that. You can find her and follow her at her website, authorspringer.com. That's authorspringer.com, all one word. More than further ado, this is Amanda Springer.
How are you?
I am excellent. I was very, very fascinated as I was reading through and fumbling over a lot of this, your biography that anyone can look up on your website, authorspringer.com. Your experiences as a military wife obviously affected the way and the topics that you write about. And you have 4 children. They grow up, a bit of a writing knack to them.
My 11-year-old daughter does. She's kind of like I was when I was young. She's always has a notebook and writing stories, and she's a Twilight fan, so a lot of her writing ventures towards that area. But she has a lot of fun with it, and I've been very supportive her wanting to write when she gets older.
As a very big book fan myself, are there pictures in them? Because if they're not, I don't read them.
No pictures. I'm sorry.
How about the Investigating Paranormal one? Anything in that?
It's a diary, basically, of our ghost hunting adventures, and there's also a step-by-step guide in it on how to create your own ghost hunting team from the ground up. Every scenario, even starting your own website and how to conduct a case. It tells someone how to get started and how to recruit members, and it's interesting. It's helped a few people get started.
I think a lot of people with the interest, even if they don't want to start a team, at least they get an idea of the right way of doing things. And in 2005, you put together your team?
Yes. We originated in Oklahoma when I was stationed there with my husband, and we had a good 18 members. All the way from our own security guards to investigators, people that went out and did the research on the case before we actually left for it. And we had our technical team that tried to clear up any pictures that we came back that were blurry, and they tried their best to keep our equipment running well.
When you were in a station out in Oklahoma, what base were you stationed at?
Fort Sill.
And how old is that fort?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's been there forever.
We did a paranormal investigation at what is now a state park. It was Fort Worden in Washington State. It was opened in 1905 and closed in 1953 after the Korean War. It is haunted as heck. We, as a park, you can rent out for the weekend the old officers' quarters, and we were sitting in the living room and we could hear them walking and talking in the hall. And the old morgue is still situated pretty much like it was, but it's under what is now the school, or had been the school, so that was kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And many soldiers had died there because after they were shipped home during the First World War with the Spanish flu, and a lot of them passed in the fort, and there were accidents and things like that. So it was an incredibly active place. Was your fort relatively active, or did you even try in the fort, or strictly off base?
We were strictly off base. We never really got permission to venture on there to do what we wanted to do. The older part of Fort Steele, where the cavalry is and where they keep the horses and everything, is the oldest part of Fort Steele. And I love to just drive through there with the old houses, but we never really got to investigate anything over there, although we had heard things from various people that had their own experiences there.
Oh, yeah, there would be, because, anywhere where you have a drill hall or a drill area where a lot of energy is repeating itself over and over and over again, you're going to get a bit of residual left behind. And where I went to training to be a Royal Canadian Mounted Police, we had a drill hall. And people swear up and down at night, you'd walk by there and you could hear boots like smashing onto the hardwood. Mm-hmm. And there's nobody in there. And then you hear muffled voices, probably the drill NCO yelling and screaming at them. But that was way before I was interested in the paranormal. I just thought it was kind of cool to listen about that stuff. What got you, as a mom, a very outdoorsy, active person, to actually focus on something, that we call paranormal?
My mother was always into researching ghosts and paranormal activity, and she was a pagan. She was very open to the other side of the world, and she passed away March 7th of 2000. And before she passed away, I had never had any experiences in my life. I was very closed-minded. Well, 2 weeks before she passed away, I was laying in bed and I was in between awake and asleep. I heard a gun go off in front of my face. And of course, I was freaking out. I was scared. I woke my husband up and he's like, no, nothing's going on. And it was so real to me. I mean, I felt it. I saw it. I heard it. My ears were ringing. It was so close to me. And almost a week later, to the T, at the exact same time, it happened to me again. And no explanations for this gun going off. I have no clue why. And, I was wondering if, it was paranormal, if it was just my imagination. I had no answers. Well, another week later, at the exact same time, I was laying in bed, and I'm wondering if it's going to happen again. Well, it didn't, and my phone rang. And I answered the phone, and they told me that my mom had passed away, and they said that she took her own life by a gun. And it made me wonder if somebody was trying to warn me, if there was some spirit trying to give me the heads up that something was about to happen. I mean, was it the connection me and her had together? And after she passed away, after the funeral and everything and had been done, we went back to our base. We were stationed at Fort Hood at the time. And my boys were young. They were 2 and 3. And my 3-year-old come running into me, and he told me that Grandma was there. And I'm like, no, babe, Grandma's not here. And he insisted that Grandma was there. And he walked me towards the living room, and the baby swing in the living room was lightly rocking back and forth. And no explanation why. My other son was taking a nap, and my 3-year-old had been with me for a little bit, and he couldn't reach to wind it up anyway. And he started talking to people that wasn't there. Picture frames in my house began to move on their own. Things began to move themselves when you weren't looking. And like, you would be in the kitchen, and out of the corner of your eye, you would see an adult pass by when I knew I was alone with the boys. And different things began happening. And it wasn't until she passed away that all this stuff started forming. And it wasn't just her. It was other spirits that were attracting to my house. And it spread throughout our apartment complex. One military wife that has no children, her husband was gone, was telling me that things began to move in her place, and she was 2 doors down. The people across the way from me told me that their toys were turning on for no reason. Whenever she passed away, she affected a lot of lives, and I don't know why she was doing it. I don't know why anything was happening or why it wasn't just secluded to my family. And it opened a lot of conversations with other people about their experiences with the paranormal. And as we began investigating my house, you know, and team members like, well, can we check out my house? And word started to spread like wildfire what we were doing. And we started getting phone calls a lot of scared people that wanted us to come check things out. And it just escalated from that point on. And we've been running for 11 years now.
Wow.
And it was pretty wild how quickly everything just went on its own.
So when you first started, Amanda, you'd head out to these places because you literally had a complaint from the public that something was going on. Most of these people, I guess, they were acquaintances at that point? They weren't complete strangers?
In the beginning, they were friends or, you know, a friend of a friend, you know, and then before we knew it, I mean, even the police department called us wanting to check something out, and we became well-known very fast. It seemed like within 6 months, I mean, people we had no idea who they were calling. And, you know, it was all the experiences were different with the callers on the other end of the phone, but most of them, you know, seemed scared. They were wanting answers, and we were their last resort. You know, they had been tormented, I guess you would say, long enough to where they felt they needed help, that they couldn't control the situation on their own, and we started going. Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating that you'd. That is actually it's a sad but interesting story which got you involved in this, and I'm wondering does that when you moved, did the occurrences follow you?
Well, from the moment she died, there was, I don't know what he was, a figure, and he followed us from Fort Hood, Texas, to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to Tulsa, and then he followed us when we moved to Illinois. And I believe, for some reason, that he was attached to her. And this thing had been seen by countless friends and family members and soldiers that would spend time in our house. And it seemed to have latched on to my family, and I don't know if it was latched on to her and it moved to us, but he was stuck with us, and he never really bothered anybody. He would make sure that he was seen. I would have dreams about him, and it was almost like the typical pictures of the Grim Reaper without the sickle is what he looked like. He had a black cloak. You could never see his entire face. It was just his mouth. And he was very tall, almost to the tops of the doors. And he never really done anything. It was like he was watching us. And whenever we left Texas, I figured, okay, he's going to stay here. We're going to move on. He didn't stay. He followed, and he followed quite a lot. You know, we moved a lot with the military. And whenever we came back to Illinois, I flat out asked him, I said, what do you want? And he never spoke, like I said, he never bothered anybody. It was like he was observing us. And he never really ventured anywhere else. He just stayed with us.
Okay. Have you talked to a psychic or anybody or a spirit medium to try to communicate with him that way?
No, we never really bothered him. He never bothered us, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't want to dig too deep or rock the boat. You know, he had showed capability of following us. You know, my biggest thing I liked about him was he never bothered my kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, he did his thing, whether it be watching us or whatever he did, and we did ours. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but, you know, and I first thought, you know, this is something I'm imagining, until other people step forward and they're like, you know, what's with the guy in the cloak? I'm like, you see him too. I'm not crazy. And, you know, we had caught videos of dark shadows moving in my house, and they were big like he was, but we never actually got a direct picture of him. We did get a recording of a man talking, and we couldn't make out what he said, and our technical team tried so hard, and they could not clear it up enough to make out a word.
Did this guy come into your life the day of your mother's passing or a couple of days later?
Whenever she passed away, we were in Texas at Fort Hood, and she lives here in Illinois. And we were gone a month and a half, easy, for the funeral and things that we had to tend to. And about 3 days after we returned to Texas is when everything began to change. The unexplained occurrences, the sounds. It was probably within that time frame that all of it began to happen.
What did you bring home from your mother's house to your house?
I don't know.
Like physically, did you bring home a necklace or a jewelry box or something like that?
We brought home a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Throughout the years, you know, my brother and I have, you know, grown up. You know, we've come to terms that we, you know, can't keep everything of Mom's. You know, and we've parted with a lot of things. And I mean, I don't know what it could be. You know, even me and my brother have traded objects throughout the years, and he's never had an occurrence.
Okay. I wonder if it's one of those things that one of the things you have a gut feeling that you can't get rid of. There's something that, I'm just saying that if it's come over because it was always hanging out with your mom, and you were the next, you know, kind of the next in line to inherit it. It's, I'm not going to say it's a genie, but it's that kind of, could be that kind of entity that was attached to your mother or something your mother had, and when your mother passed, it just kind of went along with the trinket.
Well, that theory was actually discussed whenever we had gone into my mom's house. We found out that not only was she into witchcraft, she was also into darker things. And, you know, I know she believed in ghosts, and she messed with Ouija boards and tarot cards and anything else that, you know, she felt compelled to do. And a couple of my friends that's on the paranormal team, they do tarot readings, and we have actually discussed the possibility of a demon or entity attaching onto my mom. And whenever she passed away, he come to me. And the theory has been talked about a lot. I've researched, you know, those types of spirits, and it can happen.
Yeah. Now, could it have, this is a sensitive question, you don't have to answer it, but could it have something to do with her passing?
I don't know. It might have.
Yeah. I'm just curious if you had thought about that too.
Well, it's crossed my mind. You know, she was 39 when she passed away, and there was no clue that it was even coming.
She's just a kid.
Yeah, She was young.
Yeah. Wow, that's it's opened a whole bunch of. This is one of those ones where I now want to come out and like see if I can see this thing, and if we can communicate with it, I'm all ready to come over. I would say the next thing to do, if you wanted to, is to talk to a spirit medium and actually get one of your, if you believe in this anyway, get one of your spirit guides to determine what it is, and if it's there waiting for an opening for you, or somehow to tick off your family or cause friction in the family, maybe there's a way to get it to move on.
And we've tried talking to him verbally. Like I said, he's never responded. He pretty doesn't show any emotion. We never know when he's angry. Nothing's going in my head at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he wants, but it just seems like he's observing, like he's just always watching. And there was one night, I don't know if that had to do with him or not, that my daughter was having a sleepover, and like I said, she's a big Twilight junkie. And I heard all this screaming from a bunch of 10-year-olds. I thought, what in the world is that? So I ran upstairs, and out of my daughter's doorway, you can see my son's TV. And they said that they saw something walk by the door, and just as they all looked, they watched an Xbox remote pick up off the entertainment stand, levitate for a minute, and it slammed down, and that's when they all started screaming. And we've had experiences that I don't believe were caused by him.
Okay. Who do you think they're caused by?
I don't know. And we moved here in this house 2 years ago. And whenever we first moved in, from day one, we've had activity here. All the kids were at school, and there was 3 other adults here with me. And we were kind of taking a break from moving boxes, and we were in the kitchen talking. And somebody ran up the stairs that was 2 foot from us. And we all looked, and you could literally hear it running up the stairs. And that door in the kitchen that leads to those stairs, it will open and close. If we shut it, whatever's doing it will open it. If we open it, they'll close it. It's kind of, you can't win with that situation. But in the back room, which I believe was added on, I'm guessing this house was made around the 1920s. There's been scratching on the floor back there. There's been scratching on the door that leads to the basement. One of my cousins said that she heard growling back there. When we would stack boxes in that room, the boxes would fall over no matter how stable we had them. We've had the cabinet doors in the kitchen, which is by that room, open and slam shut in the middle of the night. It's interesting.
Interesting is a term, yes. Interesting is a wonderful term to use.
Hello?
Hello? Hello.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, good. It's a cord fell out. So last thing I said, I think interesting is a good term. In that case, man, that must be unnerving. Or are you just used to it now?
It makes a lot of sleepless nights sometimes. We had a pastor come in and bless the house, and for a good 3 months, everything was quiet. You could feel a difference in the air. There was no noises at night, and for some reason it picked back up. And I've also noticed that I'm 4 days out from the anniversary of my mom passing away, so I'm kind of wondering what's coming around again.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's, that kind of creeps me out, just thinking about it. I'm wondering if the things that, I know when we're involved, no, I shouldn't say we, but I know some people that do house clearings. And one of the things, the caveat they put on these things is sometimes they say that those on the other side know we're coming before they show up. And they'll actually leave. The house will be cleared, or they'll be pushed out, and they'll just wait outside, and then they'll come back in again.
Yeah.
Depending on what the energy is and what the purpose the energy has in that, around those people, that family, in that property. So, maybe it's supposed to be there. It could be, could be anything from a negative, your hooded guy could be anything from a negative entity that affected, your mom that she brought in and now is come over with you, or it was your mom has gone and she's sent somebody else to guard you, to look after you.
I have no idea.
Yeah, there's two ways of looking at it. Now, so that's your interest in the paranormal gets piqued because of that, and you have a number of really interesting experiences, and we're going to touch on those, and we're going to touch on Amanda's book, Investigating the Paranormal, and her other, her actually a couple of books, The Haunted Diary, and what she ended up doing, putting together a Ghost Hunter's Notebook. And we're going to be talking to Amanda about those right after we come back.
Want to find out what's coming up on the Spaced Out Radio Network? Go to spacedoutradio.com, where you can find our daily list of shows and guests appearing throughout the week. Want to tell us your story? Be sure to sign up for the Spaced Out Forum for free. Maybe you have a psychic question. Drop in and say hi to Catherine in Cat's Corner. spacedoutradio.com, your 24-hour source for UFOs, ghosts, conspiracies, and more. Check it out today.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Readings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a realm reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Are you one of many who's had a UFO or ET experience? Listen up. The AZ UFO show is on every Sunday night at 7 on the Spaced Out Radio Network. We talk about UFO sightings across the globe, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, and more with me, Rich Giordano. I want you to know what's going on in the skies above you, so tune in to the AZ UFO show on Spaced Out Radio Network on spacedoutradio.com right before Spaced Out Weekend. Our show is literally out of this world.
The sky is the limit on Spaced Out Radio. Hi there, this is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Join me live every Monday through Friday at 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern for news, reviews, and updates on what's happening in the realms of UFOs, paranormal, supernatural, conspiracy, and more. Find it all at spacedoutradio.com, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Spaced Out Radio. Listen in soon.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Spaced Out Weekend broadcast on the Spaced Out Radio Network. You can follow James and other shows at spacedoutradio.com. And don't forget to join our free forum. Now here's the paranormal guru, weekend host, James Tyson.
Welcome back to quarter number 2 with Amanda Springer, an author and paranormal experiencer, and her books can be found at www.authorspringer.com. Again, that's www.authorspringer.com. AmandaSpringer.com, or actually just Google Amanda Springer, author, and it'll take you to a number of pages, including an Amazon page, which goes through a list of a lot of her books. How many books have you written?
There's number 14 will be out this October.
Number 14. You said this October. For some reason, I thought you were going to say this afternoon. Number 14. Yep, this afternoon. But ones we're interested in. Well, I'm going to tell our listener, just so they know books are out there, and I'm just going to read these off Amazon right now. It's Investigating the Paranormal Midnight Poems in the Eyes of a Military Wife, the Military Support Group, Camo and Roses, the Dog Tags and Badges Series, Book 1, A Heart of Stone, Cold January, the Dog Tags and Badges Series, Book 2, A Ghost Hunter's Notebook, A Haunted Diary, and Poems from the Grave. Okay, that one's just crazy. I don't want to even go near that one. And Deadly Game and Love and Magic. And those are all, you can find those, just go to goodreads.com, put in Amanda Springer, and those will pop up. Now, Amanda, before the break, we were talking about your experiences in your house and this entity. The only entity that you have in your house?
No, there's a little girl. She likes to play with the toys that are left out by my 4-year-old. We really didn't know about her until she popped up by accident. We were trying to catch the entity that follows us, and we heard a little girl talking on the tape recorder, and all my kids had gone to Grandma's house. That way there was no disturbances in the tape recorders, the video cameras, or anything. I didn't want to find something and it be my daughter talking. And we had taken countless pictures and everything, and the technical team that reviews a lot of our evidence called me up, and they said, you need to come down here. And they said, we caught somebody talking in the middle bedroom. I said, okay. So we listened to a little girl talking about a wagon, and she sounded 3-4 years old, and they were witnesses. My daughter wasn't there that night, and we had listened to it over and over, and we couldn't make out the first part, but it's something about her red wagon. And I'm like, okay. So we had no clue she was around. I don't know if she came for the investigation, if she's all the time, or just sporadically. There's outside of the voices, we picked up a very bright glowing orb in the hallway. It just seems to be floating there. In the hallway is where a lot of activity comes from. You can hear people walking. The music box had a lot to do with the paranormal investigation team too. Day one, when we moved in that house in Oklahoma, not only did we have this thing following us, and we had the little girl, there was a music box that would play, and I didn't have a music box. My daughters didn't have a music box, and we looked all over that house and not a music box at all. But at night, you could hear it playing every now and then, and it seemed to be coming from the area of my daughter's bedroom. And it was strange. It was like this music box was inside the walls, or if it was just appearing out of nowhere. And we had caught it on so many tape recorders and video cameras that it just became another thing, another unexplained thing that we just learned to deal with over time. But it had a lot to do with it. People would come visit, and I'm like, do you hear that? And I'm like, yeah, just let it go. It'll quit here in a little bit. And how easily, we dismissed some of the things, started to worry some people, I'd say. But it would just come out of nowhere and stop as mysteriously as it began.
Yeah, when they buried the young girl in the wall with the music box.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's a good one. But you did move into a house built in the 20s, so there's been a lot of energies of some sort moving in and out for so many years, almost 100 years. So, and who knows what the heck it was built on. Now, that's in a town, is that Nokomis? Is that how you say it, Nokomis, Illinois?
Yeah, it's a small rural community. it was built, I'm saying in the late 1800s, due to the coal. There was a large supply of it here in the area, and that's how a lot of these little towns popped up. And when the coal ran out, a lot of the town died down, but it's still here. And that's what a lot of the people came here for originally, and the families just stayed. But a lot of the houses in town were built late 1800s, early 1900s. They're large historical houses that you would, see in Savannah or something. They're beautiful. They've been well taken care of over the years.
Yeah, so that's almost right smack in the middle of Illinois, just a little bit south, isn't it? Like of the
pretty
center?
Much.
Yeah, just south of the center. Interesting place, because that would be actually a large. It's what I remember, and you have to excuse me because I'm not overly good with American geography, but there's a lot of lakes and there's a lot of water there too. There's in Illinois, so that energy is going through it. There was also a lot of First Nations or American Indian presence back in the day because of the lakes, because of the availability of water, and then game, because there was water around. So you do have that historic. Those other populations kicking around too that go back a couple of thousand years. So, yeah, new town. And who knows? I think every town that mined coal had some kind of disaster where either 2 or 40 miners got killed, or brought home some horrible, emphysema or lung disease from working in a coal mine at the turn of the century. So you've got some. You've got energies that are like anywhere else, where it's walking up and down the street. You've put together. Have you been doing paranormal investigations in your community in Nokomis?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you? Is that mentioned in your book?
No, those books were printed before we moved to Nokomis. I'm keeping the journals and everything to hopefully, have a book number 2 with the haunted diary. The ghost hunting team with the winter here, we haven't been very active. One of the last cases we took before winter set in was a plantation out by Fillmore, where one of the biggest Native American battles in Illinois took place. And we came back with a lot of evidence from that.
Oh, that'd be cool. Very, very cool. What kind of evidence did you get from that?
When we go in, we like to take about 5 different cameras with us. We've been experimenting with digital versus the old film cameras, and we even have an old Polaroid that we like to use just to see how it does. We go in with video cameras, thermal readers, tape recorders. We've got all kinds of stuff. Some of my members that are more on the medium side bring their own tools. We go in with so much stuff. We go in with about a good 1,000 batteries.
Yeah.
But we usually take a truckload of things whenever we head out.
What kind of evidence did you come out of that battlefield with?
We actually got a full-bodied image of a person standing there, and they're white. We can't really tell if it's a soldier or a Native American or what they are, but you can make out the head, the shoulders, the torso, and down towards the knees it starts to vanish, where you can evidently tell it's hovering over the ground, and they're just standing there. We had a lot of personal experiences. We have junior investigators that are learning. They're teenagers that are interested in the field, and we're training them to be future investigators for my team. One of them had his coat jerked on with such force that it almost took him down to the ground. Well, at that point, we were discussing heading back. The field was huge, and we started to head back, and one of the investigators turned to say something to me, and we caught him being jerked down on the video camera. It was nothing that he could have done on his own. It looked like somebody had grabbed his arm and tried to pull him down to the ground. There was drum beats on a couple of the videotapes, the tape recorders, but there was nothing heard on the video cameras. There was a lot of pictures where a mist would come in, and I don't allow any of my investigators to smoke when we're out. It messes with the evidence, it messes with the cameras, and they can do that, when we're not investigating. And this mist kept coming out while we're walking down the road towards this old cemetery from the late 1800s. And there was a lot that evidence where he was forced to the ground was, I think, one of the best pieces of evidence that we ever had. Thank God he wasn't harmed. But it was strange to watch what the spirits are physically capable of doing.
Yeah, that would have taken a lot of energy from something on the other side to do that. Maybe he was stepping on an old grave he didn't know, and it was pulling him down into the grave. Okay, just thought I'd throw that out. I was doing an interview with somebody about Ouija boards, and as Karen Dahlman is like one of the world's gurus in Ouija boards, or Ouija boards. She'll yell at me for saying Ouija. And she's been doing it ever since she was a kid, and she was saying all you have to do is have some intent. As long as your intent is good, it's like Reiki, as long as the intent is there. So now I'm thinking, maybe I'll give it a try, because I've always said there's no way I'd ever do that. And as I was on the radio here thinking about it as she was speaking, I thought, maybe I'll give it a try. And something grabbed my collar and pulled me back in my chair. I turned around thinking it was one of my kids, and nope, nobody there. Found out later from a young lady who's a spirit medium. She said, "Oh no, it was your dad. He was just telling you to smarten up. Don't think about stuff like that." Because I don't have the skill set to go into a Ouija board and say, okay, I only want the nice ones to come through, because I wouldn't be that good at it right off the bat, and I'd end up opening the door for all sorts of dimwits to come flying in. And all my house needs is one more dimwit, and we'd all go to heck. Anyway, it's that feeling where you when you do get pulled, and it's hard to explain to somebody. I just got something grabbed me and pulled me back. We were doing a paranormal investigation, and I was talking to this woman in front of me who had a ponytail, and you could see her head twitch, and she turned around, and there was nothing there, but something had pulled her ponytail. So, when you do get touched, it's that kind of odd feeling of almost violated, but can you do it again? It's like, oh, that was really cool, but now that I'm not scared, do it again. And then, or if you're on TV, you ask to be touched, and when you are touched, you run screaming down the hallway in a puddle of your own urine. In your case, out on a battlefield, and do you primarily go to those places during the day, or do you go at night?
We'll go during the day, just to get an idea of what we're facing.
Oh, you faded away.
We generally go first during the day, just to see if there's anything that would cause injury, if there's anything we need to be aware of. And then we go in at night to do our investigation. We, especially my security team, we believe in watching everybody and making sure everybody's safe. And we like to be aware of any anything at all that would harm any of the investigators.
Oh, yeah. You do a recce first and make sure that there's no low-hanging electrical wires and all that stuff that when you walk in there. And the other thing, too, is that if you are using EMF meters, it's always good to know where wires and power panels and things are, and when you walk around a building, or even, in a field, you can tell, electric fences over regular fences and things like that. Makes sense. Now, you were a peace officer at one time, or policeman. Did anything in your career ever strike you as being out of the ordinary now that you look back on it?
Nothing I experienced. One of my fellow officers did call my investigation team to his house. He had a lot of strange incidents that were happening. A couple of fellow officers used an abandoned school for training, and we had to go into the school and investigate things. But as with myself, not really. I attended a call one time where a lady believed that she had an intruder, and she was an elderly lady, and she kept saying that someone was in her house. They were walking around. Her kitchen cabinets were slamming. I mean, different things were happening. And, there's always a fine line, whenever you're a police officer, whether or not you believe something's paranormal. So that's not something somebody wants to hear when they call 911, I never had anything personally. I had one, and looking back at it, it was definitely out of the ordinary, but it saved my life. If I had been anybody else, I keep saying anybody else I work with, they would have just knocked on the door and been shot through the door. But I, did a few things differently, just kind of because I was by myself and just horsing around, and it wasn't even a dangerous call. Well, I didn't know it was until afterwards, but saved my life doing it. And I still have the bullet to remind me not to pay attention to what my bosses would have told me to do. Looking back years later, I look at it and go, yeah, that's really weird that I did all that stuff for no apparent reason, but it saved my life. So it was like a near death that wasn't a near death. And I did see things like people standing in fields, and what I thought was the warm, where the heat ripples the ground, kind of the heat waves. I thought it was that, the reason why I couldn't see their legs. And then I turned a corner and looked at them again, and they were there, and then they disappeared. So I thought, okay, that's a little weird. Yeah, definitely.
How am I going to talk to them? I'll have to wait till I'm dead. Yeah, I'm just curious about that, because there's a great guy out there named John D'Souza, FBI agent for many, many years, now retired, who's written a book, and it's filled, I think it's got 52 examples of police and FBI who have experienced paranormal activity on the job. And as well as I do, it's not something you'd want to say to somebody on the job, because guess who's not getting invited to coffee anymore with them? You don't come up and say, every time I come around the corner here, I see a ghost. Anybody else seeing that? And they'd all look at you like, okay, James, we're just going to hang out over here. You can play with your ghost over there. But he's collected all these stories from people who kept it to themselves until they retired. But it's an amazing book. And again, that's John D'Souza. If you ever happen to run into one of his books, Amanda, those are kind of cool stories about all these ghostly and almost UFO events, and a few of them where people hire, I guess he was actually working at the White House for a while, but in higher jobs in the government, and of course not being able to talk about the stuff they were seeing.
Right.
Yeah, because I can imagine me showing up at work one day saying, "Hey, did everyone else see that UFO land?" And no, okay, Jim, we made an appointment to go see a doctor, and you're going to have to go. In fact, leave your gun here because we'll look after it for you. What did I say? Because those things happen. I was at an old psych unit, which if anyone out there watches the X-Files, the new episodes, even the old episodes of the X-Files, you'll be familiar with it. It's the doctor with the new X-Files. It's quite prominent in the last episode 6, I guess, of the X-Files. The hospital where Scully is going to, that is actually a closed down psych hospital out here that was built back in the 20s, and it's a tad haunted. But the grounds in that area are haunted because I was out there as a policeman. Some kids were running around out there at night, and we just went out looking for them. And somebody came up and slapped me in the back, and I turned around thinking it was one of the guys I work with, and there was nobody there. So you get those creepy little things happen at work once in a while, and you don't want to tell anybody till years later.
There was a jail I worked in. They needed part-time help, and I was a police officer, and I signed up to help them out. And it was a very large jail. I was in the tower, which controls all the doors, and you can see everything from every perspective. I had a feeling I was being watched. I looked over, and there was somebody standing in the window of the cell door. I got on the intercom. I'm like, you need to go to bed, please. It was creeping me out. They would disappear for a little bit, and they'd come back. And I thought, okay. Well, I got my sergeant on the phone. I said, who's in that cell? I said, they've been watching me for quite a while. And he comes up to the tower, and he goes, I'm going to open the doors. You go over there, and you look in that cell and see who's in there. And there's something up at this point. My gut feeling was like telling me there's something up with this whole scenario. I go over there, and I look through the window. I didn't see anybody. Well, I kind of wondered what could possibly be happening. There's nobody in there. I said, that's impossible. I watched the person walk away from the window, and then they came back. And I watched them walk away again, and they come back. And he goes, that cell will never be occupied. And I said, why? And he said that, an inmate had committed suicide in there. Whenever they put somebody in there, they've complained that somebody's in there walking around, the very uneasy, uncomfortable feeling that you got being in there. Night after night, we were on third shift, and it never failed. Whoever was in there, would be watching. You could literally see the shadow walk away from the window, and like maybe they were pacing sometimes.
Yeah. Still waiting to get out.
Yeah.
Well, that's just every so often you run into those things at work, don't you?
Yeah. Well, hospitals and jails and psychiatric wards and anywhere where there's a lot of emotional distress seems to be the most active places.
A lot of the visual activity will come from residual energy. Do you find that too?
Sometimes. More often, we have found that people that are remodeling kind of stir things up. We had a case where they were remodeling, and they were actually rebuilding one part of the house. And the minute they started with the construction, it's like they woke something up. And a lot of times I wonder if they don't see things as they are used to seeing them. And when things start changing, I think they start getting a little aggravated. With residuals, I've watched videos on the internet of, ghosts that are stuck repeating the same thing day after day after day. And I've not really encountered a lot of that. A lot of ours is suddenly they're acting out, or they have been for a while and they didn't know who to call. Usually when we get the calls, they're to the point of snapping. They've had enough. We're the last resort on whatever's going on. We actually went into an investigation where they had the house blessed. They had an exorcism done on the house. Nothing was working. And we had gone in, and we picked up voices. The parrot in the home, it was weird because he would start singing you lullabies. They said, we have never sung the bird that song. We don't even have any children, and these people were in their 50s. It's interesting. Each case is so different. The client's different. What's happening is different. You never know what to expect. It's never the same.
Oh, the parrot lullaby one. That's a good story. I like that one. That's kind of creepy.
Well, he was interesting. It was like somebody else had been teaching him all this stuff as if there was somebody else living there, and they were the ones spending time with this bird, and they were talking to him. They had no children. They didn't have any real nieces or nephews that would have come over and taught the bird. A lot of them were grown up and, had children of their own. So, we don't know where he's getting this stuff. It was just interesting to hear him, knowing that possibly a ghost had taught this bird everything he knows. But, yeah, he would sit there and start singing you lullabies, and he would talk to you like an adult. He was quite the event. We tried to get him to calm down a couple times and be quiet, and he never would. And half of our audio was him running his mouth in the background. But
yeah,
it was a good laugh.
After you play it all back, you realize, hold on, that was actually the ghost speaking through the bird. We kept telling it to shut up, but it was trying to answer our questions through the bird. Oh, man, that is kind of cool. We're going to be back right after this break with some more weird stories from author Amanda Springer.
This is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. We will get you back to Uncle Jimbo James Tyson and Spaced Out Weekend in just a moment. But right now, I wanted to remind you that Spaced Out Radio broadcasts Monday through Friday at this exact same time, 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern, where we will be discussing the latest happenings from UFOs to Bigfoot. Join us, will you? Spaced Out Radio. Let us be a part of your journey.
Ready to find out what's flying up in the sky? Me too. Hi there, this is Rich Giordano. Please join me every Sunday night at 7 for the AZ UFO Show. It's a fast and compelling 2-hour show on UFOs, extraterrestrials, conspiracy theories, and much more. Every week we will have great guests and great topics to try and answer the ultimate question, are we alone in this universe or not? So tune in to the AZ UFO Show with me, Rich Giordano, right here on the Spaced Out Radio Network at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, revealetr.wix.com/revealetr&r, or my Facebook page, Revealet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. Spaced Out Radio listeners will also receive 10% off their first visit. It's time for you to make time for you.
The Spaced Out Radio Network can be found at spacedoutradio.com. Hi there, this is Dave Scott. Here you can join the latest on our weekly shows and news from around the world involving UFOs, cover-ups, cryptids, ghosts, and more. Read articles from our very talented staff and check out our weekly tarot card reading from Psychic Catherine. You can also sign up for free on our forum and tell us about your experiences. SpacedOutRadio.com. Always live, always interactive.
Do you have a guest or a topic you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson? You can email us at james@spacedoutradio.com with your idea. And now back to our weekend paranormal warrior. Here's James Tyson.
Yeah, it's me, James Tyson. Welcome back. We're with the author, Amanda Springer. Now, if you want to look up some of her writings and her books, and she can go to her website, it's www.authoraspringer.com. Again, www.authoraspringer.com, and I'm highlighting it and copying it and placing it in our chat room so you guys can go out there. And there is a group you can join, and it's Amanda's Street Team. And if you like her books, you can join it, and she has prizes and giveaways and discussions on her books and the inside scoop and new things. Now, Amanda, last time we spoke, not too long ago, we were talking about, obviously, the weird and wonderful things that go bump in the night in your life. Now, you've written The Haunted Diary and The Ghost Hunter's Notebook and these things. Now, in The Haunted Diary, as you said, it covers a lot of the paranormal investigations that you went through back in Oklahoma before moving to Illinois. We were talking off air about keeping notes about the Illinois investigations and possibly, or, if you get it put together, putting a new book together in the Illinois ones. In the Haunted Diary, what would you say are some of the ones that would really stand out to you as being spooky as heck and things that you weren't expecting?
The way that one entity followed us, and he's all throughout the book.
And that's the one that followed, like the hooded guy who followed you home? That one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He's all the way throughout the book. I even wrote my dreams down that he was in. There was a couple investigations that I know were extremely creepy, even for us. All the details of the cases are included. We didn't put where we were just for their privacy, but what we found, what we experienced, even the experiences here at my house, are creepy.
Yeah, they would be. For the sake of our listener, and being that it's very late at night, and I hate it when they have a good night's sleep after the show, could you kind of bounce into one of those really creepy ones and give us a little bit of a story behind what would have creeped your team out?
Let's see. There was one where we investigated a one-room abandoned schoolhouse out in the country. We had to have a guide to get to it. There was a lot of paranormal talk. There was a lot of urban legends based upon this place. It was built in the late 1800s, and as society grew and public school systems came in, the school was forgot about. In the early 1900s, there was 3 murders that happened in that abandoned schoolhouse. There was 3 teenagers that were there. They never found out who did it, but the guide walked us out there, and the whole time he's trying to convince us not to go. Whenever we got close enough to where we could see it, he refused to go any further. He actually dropped to his knees and began to pray for us. We went.
Of course you did. You have to at that point. If a guy's going to pray for you and not want to go, that's when you want to go.
Yeah. We went in. We had to cross a bunch of debris to get in there. It was just a one-room schoolhouse. There was actually kind of a stage up front. There was nothing more to it. There wasn't even a restroom. That facility, from the minute we got there, there was noises like people were walking around us. The floor turned black, like it was literally crawling or moving. On the footage, it actually looks like a black plant or something crawling across the stage, and it's coming across the floor. It never got close enough on the footage for you to see the details that we saw. It was actually the only investigation in our history where one of our investigators were injured. One of our investigators was standing in the middle of the room, and he had a video camera, and he was slowly turning to show all the walls and just, what we were in. Something clawed his arm. His right upper bicep had 3 red marks going down it, and they were bleeding. There was actually heat emitting off of the injuries. It was an investigation that made my heart pump. We went outside by the old well where we knew the kids could be found that were murdered out there. All around us in the woods, you could hear things like they were walking around us, like they were circling us, and there was never anybody around us. At one point in time, one of our investigators said that she heard whispering. We went after them, and we never heard anything running from us. We never heard anything walking away from us. It was always like it was constantly moving around us. We had one investigator, and her heart was pumping so bad that I took her, down the road. We got in the car. We were sitting there in the car, and I can see her in plain view. There's no other investigators with us. From behind us, something pushed the car forward. The car went forward, and it rolled back. We just kind of looked at each other, and we had forgotten to shut off our tape recorders. I was worried about her physical health, and, I was going to get her out of there, and we're going to relax and calm down and sit. I told the technical team, whenever we got back, I said, you look at this particular time and see if you hear anything on those tape recorders. And they wrote it down and said they would. They heard a male voice at the time that the car was shoved. We couldn't tell what language he was speaking at all. No clue what he said. The investigators come out, and we vowed we would never return. There was no way on earth that was ever going to happen. Our security team, was stationed around the place. There was no way nobody could have messed with us. Other than our guide, no one knew we were there. We never announced we're going to a certain place until after we've been there. That way, you know, a teenager with an ornery streak can't mess with us or the equipment. And just the events that night, to think back on them was just nerve-wracking. It was, you'd hear a noise and you'd go after and there'd be another noise. And it was like sometimes they were kind of leading you. It was as if there was several things, you know, vultures circling its prey or something. It's a hard case to explain.
Yeah. So you go back, you get all your evidence reviewed. Did you get anything that you could identify at all? Any voices, any whispers for help?
Other than the male voice, which we don't know what language it is, you could hear things walking, but on a tape recorder, that's hard to explain. It's not my investigators. You could see the stage like slowly turning black, but you can't see that it's crawling towards us. We picked up several orbs in the pictures. We had a lot of personal experiences that night, but not a lot of it showed up. And I think that's a lot of the aggravating parts to being an investigator. You know this just happened, that, you know, out of 30 pieces of equipment that are in the same room, none of them picked them up. We don't want to upset the spirits or whatever lurks in the night. We just want to provide proof that they do exist, that there is hauntings, and that there is, you know, paranormal activity out there.
Have you ever been on an investigation where you actually had a back and forth conversation with a spirit?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we actually watched a ghost hunting team on television where they did. We've never experienced such a thing. Now, some of the more psychic in tune members of our group, they have when they're at home trying to communicate, but they haven't really during an investigation. I've done that twice, and it's very, very freaky. Yeah.
You know, I was actually talking to Spirit 1 comes through, and then Spirit 2, who's just a prick, comes through and starts ridiculing the first spirit and saying, well, I'm not letting you go, you're stuck here. And then so
we've asked questions out in the open, and we've heard an answer on the audio equipment that was reviewed later, but we haven't heard the answer directly while we were there. It was something that had to be picked up on the equipment to be able to hear it.
Yeah, this is the same with me. It's basically through the spirit box. You're getting the real time communication, but then reviewing that is like listening to a tractor, because it's just terrible in your hearing. Having to listen to that clinking and hissing for 10 or 15 minutes with the volume cranked up to try to determine if the voices are picked up or not. But yeah, we've got a lot of good. Not always really good evidence from those things, but you know, when you do get them, when you do actually catch that one moment where you can have a to and from conversation or back and forth with something from the other side, those are few and far between. Unfortunately, both times I had it, they were like just jerks, and which is probably why they came through so clear. They didn't really want us to be there, and they were telling us to F off and all sorts of things. But yeah, those are kind of fun to a point. They're not spooky negative, you know, Old Testament spooky negative. It's just some grumpy old spirit who never crossed. Is that what you find a lot of times in houses? Is just somebody maybe not have crossed? And if you do find that, do your clients want you to get rid of it, or would you suggest they go somewhere else to move them on, or do you also do that? Do you help them by hooking them up with somebody who moves the entity on?
We've had instances where we've tried to help, you know, the entity move on. If we're unsuccessful, we actually have people that we call that we work with, and they come in, and usually after they're done, the entity is left. Those people, unfortunately, aren't capable of going with us to all the investigations, but, you know, they've been very helpful at coming in afterwards. There's been times where we've even gone in, you know, to just talk with the client to, you know, just help, I guess, get closure.
Yeah. How does it's getting closure with the or I shouldn't say getting closure, but is it more or less like, okay, yes, this is what we've got on as evidence, and now we got to go. So how would you like to live with this, and where do you want to go from here? Is that the kind of closure you're talking about?
Well, whenever we get everything reviewed and we go back in and, we show the client what we found, we'll check back in after that to make sure, things aren't worse, to make sure that they're, living okay with what we found, possibly help the spirit move on. Anything that we could do to help make things more comfortable, I guess you would say. A lot of people, especially when you find something big, they want answers, but they don't want to know. Yeah. So it's kind of a catch-22 whenever you show them what you found. There's a lot of times where I went back to the client's house and I wish so much that I had nothing to show them, and it wasn't the case. We've helped a lot of people, and at the same time, I kind of feel like we're opening Pandora's box for them. And I don't know, we try to help the best we can. With the closure, it's kind of, especially if we get the spirit to move on, it's good to check up on them, make sure the house is calm, make sure they're doing good. Even if it's just somebody to talk to about the experiences to help them get through it.
Yeah, it's just communication and making sure you don't leave them ready to jump off the balcony kind of thing. It's in the groups that I've been involved in, there were members of the TAPS group of investigators. So it's the Atlantic Paranormal Society, and one of the rules they have is when you take the evidence back, you do not make a decision on what it is. You don't say, yeah, your place is haunted. You just said, here's a bunch of audio we have, and here's a bunch of photographs we have. And you show it to them, and you don't say it's a ghost. You don't say it's whatever. It's just, this is what we got. What do you think it is?
And we're good about letting the client interpret. And I love letting them know that when we leave here, that's not it. You can still call us. We will still drop by, just to make sure you're doing good. Then I don't know.
No, and it's good that way. And one of the things we were kind of, you never did do was when they said, oh, do you have anybody who can clean this place up? A lot of times, we knew a few people, but we didn't want to cross that line as because they pay. Those people actually charge for it, so we didn't want to be unless we knew somebody who did it for free. We wouldn't refer them because, you can say, your place is haunted, and if you call these people, they'll clean it up. And it's actually my cousin, Bob, who will come in and spray for bugs and charge you $5,000. But it's just one of those things that we try to leave them with a little bit of confidence that stress is the loss of control or perceived loss of control of a situation. So if you don't know what this is around your house and it's stressful, by giving them some answers, you've given them some control. And it cuts the stress down. Now, whether giving them some answers ramps up their stress, you can kind of point them in a direction of somebody else who works further up the food chain than you do, than where I would. And they can go contact them. But it's one of those things when you sit down with somebody and say, oh, that thing that goes bump in the night, it's your grandfather. He's building cupboards upstairs and doesn't want to be bothered, so don't go upstairs. But have you ever brought anything home with you from an investigation?
No. Not really.
Not really.
We're pretty good about not, we were on one investigation and one of the investigators, while we were preparing, found a lighter on the road, and one of our members that has, you know, a little bit of a psychic ability, and she's like, put that back down. And the investigator goes, why? She goes, put that lighter back down. You're not taking it home with you. So I don't know what was up with the lighter, but, you know, I guess sometimes, like we discussed earlier, you know, they attach to objects, you know, and other than our evidence, we try to keep, you know, anything back. There was one time we were cleansed before we left an investigation. I don't know why, but one of our mediums said we needed to be clean before we left. She said we could take something home with us. She had a real strong insistence that we do this, and we're not going to argue with her. You know, she's more enlightened than us, and, you know, we did. And, you know, I later asked her, you know, I said, why did you believe so strongly in that? And she said that, you know, one of the spirits that were in that property liked one of our female investigators. It reminded her of a family member. And she goes, we didn't want her to come back with us. I said, okay. You know, and I just left it at that. And, you know, so whenever they usually speak up and say something, they mean it. But, you know, we've been fortunate, knock on wood, and we've got a lot of people watching out for us whenever we're out there. And, you know, like I said, we even have our own security team that secures areas for us. And we try to be real safe. But, you know, we've been extremely fortunate so far.
Oh, good. What do you do when you clean yourselves, or first of all, what precautions do you take psychologically or spiritually before you go into a property? Do you do any meditation? Do you any prayers, anything like that?
We do prayers whenever we go to leave. One of the pagans of our group, she has some kind of incense she likes to burn and kind of walk around us with it. Whenever we're getting ready to go, I study a case as much as possible of what the client says is going on. We try to get as much history as we possibly can of, you know, was anybody ever murdered there? I mean, did anybody ever claim, you know, say something was happening before? And I try to focus on what the client's saying to try to focus in on their problem areas. In all reality, I mean, you never know what the paranormal field, and to expect the unexpected is pretty much our rule that we go by. It doesn't matter how prepared you are. It doesn't matter how educated you are. Chances are that a spirit will do something that will make you go, you know, just make you freeze in your tracks. And we've learned a lot as we went, but nothing totally prepares you for what could possibly go on in just a single night.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the things I found, too, is that it's in preparing, I kind of meditate a bit. I put up a wall, and when I leave, a lot of times I will use like some high vibration smoke to clear up, and it's like Palo Santo wood. Just burn that. It smells really good too, and use that, just the higher energy things, and then in my mind just say, or actually out loud a lot of times, thank you very much for allowing us in, and I'm not inviting you home. Please stay here. And then off we go. But I brought home one once and scared the bejesus out of me, and I had to get him out of here the next day. But he just latched on. Are you what, or do you know this, or have you been ever considered, or do you know yourself to be what some call an empath?
I pick up on things, but not big things. I mean, I can't. Like, I can hear the noises. Sometimes I can hear the voices, you know. Anybody can hear somebody running up the stairs, you know, but I've never seen them. I'm not good at communicating with them. I do have members that are extremely well with communication with them. One girl, I don't like saying their names, you know, if I don't have permission, but she can see them in her head. It's a gift I sometimes wish I possessed, and other times I don't.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there's a fellow we get on here who's a demonologist, Sean Whittington out of Las Vegas, and his divination is he can see negative. He can see the negative entities, like that black thing that would have been crawling across the stage in that old school. He actually walk into a place and see what has been deemed as a demon, you know, little like a cat-looking thing with a pig's face and all that, where other people don't see that. They'll see people who have crossed, and that's it. They'll be able to see the standard quote-unquote ghost. But there are a group of people out there that actually will see stuff that, you know, because of who he is and because of what his talent is for getting rid of these things in a house, that's what he can see. And there's a lady out of, I think she's out of West Virginia, Galen Chauncey, and she says, if you could see what I see, James, you would never leave your house. She sees things that beat the heck out of me what they would be in the paranormal, like large beasts and monsters and ghouly looking things, and she sees those every time she walks into the house. And she runs a paranormal team out there too, and she actually has to block that off. And she's actually we're going to try to get her on tomorrow night right after you, and she's got some very, very interesting stories when she's out with her group. She'll just sometimes freeze while they're walking into a place, and the rest of the team stops and looks at her and says, "What do you see?" She says, "I can't tell you. Let's keep moving." Come on, no, because no one else can see them except her. And then getting rid of them is a whole other thing she would have to do. But yeah, there are people out there who can see these things, and bless them, they're seeing them for a reason. Luckily, I'm not seeing them because unless I had been seeing them since I was born, coming up right at the end or near the end of my life, I start seeing these things. Yeah, I probably wouldn't go outside. It's spooky enough. We're going to come back with more from Amanda Springer, and I want you to go to her website, please. It is www.authorspringer.com, authorspringer.com. And again, if you're out next Saturday in Nokomis, in Central Illinois, go to the Central Illinois Women's Club Craft Show. I'm kidding. It's the Nokomis Women's Club Craft Show, 9 till 2 next Saturday in beautiful downtown Nokomis, Illinois. We'll be right back with more from Amanda right after this.
Want to find out what's coming up on the Spaced Out Radio Network? Go to spacedoutradio.com, where you can find our daily list of shows and guests appearing throughout the week. Want to tell us your story? Be sure to sign up for the Spaced Out Forum for free. Maybe you have a psychic question. Drop in and say hi to Catherine in Cat's Corner. spacedoutradio.com, your 24-hour source for UFOs, ghosts, conspiracies, and more. Check it out today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
The Phoenix Lights, Roswell, secret military aircraft, flying saucers. Let's check out the sky together. Hi, this is Rich Giordano, host of the AZ UFO Show right here on the Spaced Out Radio Network. Every Sunday night at 7, we hit the airwaves to talk about the phenomenon of unidentified flying objects and more. We want to hear your stories. Maybe you've seen what many others have seen. Only one way to find out, the AZ UFO Show on Sunday nights on the Spaced Out Radio Network on spacedoutradio.com.
Need a break, but don't have the time? Tired of life's running around? Hi, this is Jolene from Relaxation and Readings. Let me help you in your time of need. From Reiki to realm readings, I can help provide you therapy for your mind, body, and soul. Check out my website at rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr. And if you're a listener of Spaced Out Radio, receive 10% off your first session. Rivulet Relaxation and Readings. And don't forget to give my Facebook page a like. It's time for you to make some important time for you.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio broadcasts 7 days a week? Tune in to me, Dave Scott, Monday through Friday starting at 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern, as Spaced Out Radio delves into the most arcane stories, from conspiracy theories to UFOs to weird animals running around our forests. Find us right here at spacedoutradio.com for the stories that will blow your mind. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Weekend host James Tyson can be followed on Twitter at James Tyson SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and join our free forum at spacedoutradio.com. And now, for the final time tonight, here's James Tyson.
What do you mean it's my last... why does that guy always say that on the tape? We are back with Amanda, the spooky lady who does spooky things in a spooky life. She is an author. She's an author and of many, many books, fiction and nonfiction, and we're tonight talking to her about her nonfiction. But one of the books that I had mentioned that I'm very interested in is a book called Poems from the Grave. This was published last year, 2015, and you were saying that this book was actually a series of poems that you've written based on some of your paranormal investigations. That's really cool.
Yeah, all of the poems in the book are investigations that we attended or personal experiences that I had. It's in the Haunted Diary, you could pretty much tell what poems go with what investigation we were on, based upon the experiences or the history. I've got a couple favorite poems in here.
Okay. Could you read us a couple? Or one? Or should I make you read us a poem about one of the ones you've already talked to us about?
Oh, my favorite one, we actually haven't discussed.
Okay.
It was an old abandoned high school that we investigated. It was the one the police called us to, that they would do their training exercises in there. And we got to investigating and doing a lot of history on the place, and we found out there was a lot of dark history. The poem's called Burned. A triage this old high school became as a small town burned to the ground. Thousands died in this brick building, a dark and terrible past we found. At the front door they were all marked. With that marks, their fates were sealed. The auditorium became their hospital for those people who could be healed. In the basement were those who died and those who were going to pass away, laying there alive next to all the bodies, knowing their seconds ticked away. With the graveyard filled up all the way, places for the bodies they did look, shoving them down old wells or mines to dispose, doing whatever it took. Very few were left in the small town. Fire gone out, the smoke began to clear. The secrets of what they had done seemed to be their only worry or fear. In the history, this night disappeared. Time passed and their town grew. The ghosts patiently waited in silence. The fate to come, none of them knew. A high school filled with ghosts, and unwilling to ever forget that night. Spirits full of sadness, pain, and hate were finally ready to set things right. One by one, all the kids were marked, just like the night of the forgotten fire. To the basement they were all lured and hung from the ceiling with wire.
What? Okay, now, was there anyone hung by the ceiling with wire?
Yes.
Okay. I'm never visiting your country. Just so you know that.
There was an old high school, and extremely old. It was 4 floors, including the basement. And it resided in Oklahoma. Well, it hadn't been used in a very long time, and the police got permission to do training drills in there. And they were using thermal imagery and, just doing different exercises over a couple months time frame. And there were some of them that were knelt down at one end of the hallway using thermal imagery, and they saw people walking in the hallway. And they turned on their flashlights and looked, and there was nobody there. And they looked back down at the screen, and there was people walking. And desks would move, just different things, doors slamming, they could hear kids laughing, just all kinds of creepy things. And they called us in, and before we had done the history on this school, and Oklahoma is famous for its oil. Well, one night in the early 1900s, there was a big storm, and lightning struck something, and an oil rig or oil tank, something caught fire. And it spread to the next one and the next one, and houses were beginning to burn down. From what I gather in the history that we had found, most of the town was engulfed in this fire. And the only place they really had to go was the high school. They began to take people in there. If they were worth saving or they were alive, they went to the auditorium. And if they were dead or dying, they went to the basement. And it was a bad night. I don't remember how many people died exactly. It's been several years since I looked at that case. Well, there were so many bodies, the town cemeteries were overflowed. And I don't know of any proof in the history, but there was town talk by the elders that they were actually putting the bodies down the old oil holes to help get rid of them. And like I said, there was no history proving this fact. It was just the older folks in the town talking. Well, the high school went back to being a high school. They're rebuilding their community. And there was a boy a few years later that was involved in some kind of love triangle. And he went to that basement and he hung himself. And there had been all kinds of reports throughout time, people being there when there's not supposed to be. And when the police got permission to go in there, it had been abandoned for years because of the new high school. And they caught all this stuff on tape. And they caught the thermal imagery, tape recorders, everything. And we went in and you could hear kids talking. You could hear them walking around you. You could hear them laughing. You could hear footsteps, like the school was actually being conducted. There was several things that happened in that school besides the child suicide. There was one kid that tried to jump out of a window, and he has no idea why. There was a lot in that school that was just totally out of this world. I mean, there was no way to explain any of it. It was as if the people from that fire were still there, and they were stuck. And it seemed at times that whenever it was being used as a high school, they were messing with the kids. Like that boy's suicide and the other kid trying to jump out of the window. Almost kind of like payback, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not going to your country. Because nothing like that has happened anywhere else on the planet. So that is just creepy. Amanda, wow. And to have like a whole bunch of people who, like in law enforcement with thermal imagers, because I took thermal imager training when I was in a drug section here, because that's how we used to find grow operations in houses with growing huge amounts of marijuana. Was usually an unoccupied house glowing this huge thermal signature. So I understand. For people who don't quite understand infrared imaging, it's not something that, like, you couldn't look through a window with it, because it actually only receives. It doesn't shoot anything out. It only receives heat back from what it's looking at. So if you shoot it down a hall and you're going to see somebody walking, well, there is a energy that those beings or that entity is putting out that is then picked up by the thermal imager. So it's something you can't really fool with. It's there. It's not like it's it could have been the wind, it could have been dust. No, if it's a figure of a human being, it's a figure of a human being. Literally, if you put that up to a big plate glass window to look through it to see what's on the other side of the plate glass, you're going to see somebody looking back at you holding a thermal imager, because it's your heat signature is reflecting onto glass. So thermal imaging, it's expensive. Like back in the day in, the early 90s, ours cost $21,000. So it's not technology, that type of technology and that level of technology is not something that everybody had access to. But, if you're using it, either thermal imagery or IR imagery, something in a policing environment where it's like night vision, but you can see things a little bit clearer with the thermal imagery. Holy cow, to actually be looking down a hallway and seeing what, in all intents and purposes, are kids walking around. That would just kind of freak me out. And I've used those things for a long time. And what's kind of cool about the ones they have now, you can actually video record or digitally record what you're looking at too, which we didn't have that technology before on ours. But that would have been kind of cool to have that actually recorded. And turning it off, turning the lights on, turning it off again, and also having people who really may or may not buy into the whole spiritual side of things or spirit world. It's kind of awkward. I shouldn't say awkward, but that's kind of interesting. Because I know you get into a culture of very, very religious people, every spirit entity on the other side is demonic. It's, none of it's good. Therefore, we can never go back in there again. It's like, well, calm down. There's lots of reasons for that energy to be there. But a lot of times they just don't want to even think about the other reasons. So that would be very, very cool. And to be the peace officer that sees that and then actually has the cojones to give you a call and says, this is what we see. Because that's something, not only did I see it, but I believe it. Therefore, I'm going to call Amanda and her crew to come down here and poke around too.
Yeah.
But what a history, Amanda. Holy cow. See, and I envy you for that. The United States has a very, very complete, even though you may go to the City Hall sometimes or the archives and not find what you're looking for, it's far more complete than what we have up here in the Great Beige North. We don't have easy access to records that go back. They'll give us access to records through the local governments or the provincial government, but it's going to cost you X amount for this, and it'll cost you this much. You can't just walk into a library and open a book up and flip through every newspaper that was printed. You may have access to a few, but not all of them. But good for you guys to be able to go back and search a history like that. It's amazing.
So we have one girl, she doesn't like going on the investigations, but she loves research. She loves digging up that information and finding stuff out, and she is amazing. I mean, I don't think we would have half the information we do if it wasn't for her.
Yeah, and that's what makes it. That's really what makes it. When you leave someplace thinking, okay, I wonder whatever happened here that would have caused all this crap to carry on, when you actually have somebody who's independent, or not, I shouldn't say independent, but not there at the time, and be able to say, you know what I found out? Tell me what you found, and I'll tell you what I found out. That's why I like, I can't remember my favorite paranormal show, but because I've lost it right now. But it's they have a paranormal investigator and retired policeman. Steve Chevy is the guy's name, and he goes out into these places and he does all the research, finds out who died there and what the history of the property is, and then he comes and presents it with the psychic who has been chatting with the ghosts and seeing them and how they overlap. The dead files, that's what it is, the dead files. And it's fascinating to be able to do it like that. And I think it's the really, and if you wanted to, I know you've written a book on starting your own paranormal team, and I think that is one of the coolest things to actually have on a paranormal team is somebody who does that. That is so advantageous to the whole event. Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, Amanda. Okay, we're going to start all over again. Welcome, everybody, to Spaced Out Radio. No, I'm kidding. But, yeah, I think it's a really cool thing. And is this somebody that has got a background in research, the person on your team?
No, it's just something she really likes doing. She's just got a knack for finding out stuff, and she's really good about talking with people. And whenever you live in a small town, talking with people, you can find out more than, any research records that you could find. And there was no records for this house hardly at all, but I found out it was moved from out in the country here. And I found that out because some of the older people I would talk to is, well, your house was brought there. I'm like, what do you mean brought? And I'm like, well, it resided on the outskirts of town on, some road out there. I'm like, oh, really? But word of mouth and just talking with people I just feel like we find out so much more, especially when you start talking to the older people that have lived in this town forever, and they know stories that you're not going to find in a newspaper, Oh
yeah, you actually get to track down. Maybe there's some urban legends that you want to. You'll hear off some old timer that will tell you about. Oh, back in the day, that house that was moved in where you live. Yeah, well, there was a mass murder in there back in the 1920s, and that was where so-and-so killed her entire family. Want some cake? No. Keep talking about the whole family getting murdered. They have some great stuff. And it also, as a researcher, it sends you off on another tangent going, oh, now I got to find more about this. And this is all going to be very cool. Yeah, I love research. That's what I'd like doing as a peace officer. I'd sit at work all day and I'd dig around, and someone says, hey, do you know anything about this person? No, but give me an hour. And then we'd start. But there's where you had those really cool computer systems and access to all sorts of stuff that Joe Public doesn't have. So you could find out, who died and who killed who, and who died at birth, and just plugging into government databases, and you can get through kind of, all that good information that sometimes you want on a paranormal investigation, you just don't have access to. Dang it! You've got you have another poem in relation to a spooky situation.
Yeah, I've got a book full of them.
You have a book full of them, man. What is that book called?
Poems from the Grave.
Poems from the Grave. Okay, find another one that'll keep my listener up. And again, while Amanda's looking, you can check out her books. Just go to her website at author-a-springer.com, author A Springer. And we're kind of poking through a book that she's written, poems about her paranormal investigations. Poems from the Grave, Ghosts, Spirits, Demons, oh my. Discover the real haunted places that she has investigated. Stumble into the dark world of her nightmares and share her paranormal experiences as you read through her poetry. Amanda. Okay, no, I'm not going to sleep tonight. What have you got for us, Mandy?
All right. The orphanage. All the children in the hall, you hear that you cannot see, and knock on a door nearby. They begin to play with thee. Up and down the many stairs they will run and they will play. a quiet child's little voice, we will record what they say. The elevator is heard moving, yet no power to this old place, and some pictures we all take appearing a little child's face. A video camera we had said on one of the long halls. Later we found on the tape someone had moved the ball. Hearing laughter from behind, you will follow as if in a game. Shadows all around us. They were all children, but with no name.
Ew. Now, where was that?
It was an investigation that I actually didn't get to attend when my kids was sick, but they went, and there was an orphanage, and I don't recall the history of the place, but they were said that if you put a ball down in the hallway, the kids would play with it. And they just put the ball down in the hallway with a tape recorder or a video camera facing it, and they went about their business, investigating the rest of the place. And I watched the video, and there were several occasions where the ball would move. It wouldn't be much. And then all of a sudden, the ball was as if it was like kicked. And it went flying the opposite way of the video camera into the dark. I don't know how far it went or if it continued to move after that. We couldn't see it anymore. But there was, kids giggling, but we didn't hear anything on the audio. Whenever I read the reports and the notebooks they keep on the investigations, one of the girls felt like she had her hair tugged. Like, nothing to hurt her, but lightly, like somebody was trying to get her attention. They said, other than the giggling and the ball, there wasn't really anything else going on. They said it was kind of a playful environment.
Oh.
Like a kindergarten or a daycare. They said that, it wasn't an uneasy feeling. It was just like somebody wanted to play. But, we don't know how many spirits were in the building. We know there was at least a couple, but, they said the giggling they were hearing was kind of like maybe it was little girls.
Okay. Anything from research about the building at all is in its background?
I know it's an orphanage, and I think now it's a hospital. I'd have to dig up the case file and look through it. It's been so long.
Yeah, the orphanage part of it. Yeah, it's unfortunately, back in the day, a lot of children did die in the orphanages too. So, it's still they could hang out there because it's kind of the happy place in their lives. But they have a ball kicked or on video being zooming off, from stage right to stage left, like it's being kicked. That's as you and I are policemen. That's one of those things that is called a clue. It's like you can go, okay, write that one down because that's out of the ordinary.
Yeah. Well, they said they had no idea the ball was even touched until they came back up there and it had been relocated. But on the video, it was kind of like a little nudge, like something poked it, like they were kind of checking it out. And then it happened again, like, they were still checking it out, like, what is this? And then it went. And, it went into the shadows, so I couldn't tell how far it went. But, it was interesting to watch that. But, that was one of the things with the case was they would play with a ball. And they didn't specify what kind of ball. So we went to Walmart and got like a $2 little bouncy ball. And, they took it with them and sat it down. And, it was great to catch. But I'm kind of like, well, I want to go. But I'm sorry I missed out on that one.
Yeah, that's that is kind of an interesting one. The types of places that you go to, are they primarily public? Or like the bigger places like the schools and stuff, do you make an application or do you find out who owns it, or are you asked to go into places like that?
90% of the time we've got to get permission. Either they call us and give us permission by wanting us to take the case, or we've got to seek them out. It's actually pretty easy when people find out, that we try to keep our team professional and, how long we've been doing it. And, our objective isn't in there to go in and get the spirits fired up. Our objective is to just get scientific evidence. We've only been denied a case one time, and they said it was because the floors in it were unstable. I wish it was in better shape. We really wanted that one. But the people actually lived in Florida, and the building was in Oklahoma, and it took us, one trip to the courthouse to find out who was on the taxpayers list, and we Googled their name and, had their number within 30 minutes. But it's pretty simple to get permission. We know of another team, but they haven't had really any luck getting into places, but they haven't been around that long to get a name out for themselves.
Yeah, that'll do it. And unfortunately, we get a lot of people out there burning the bridges for everyone else by just being jackasses when they are doing paranormal investigations, and that's going to hurt. It basically hurts everybody in the long run. But since 2005, you guys jumped into it before it was really this big phenomena. I shouldn't say phenomena. This big media blitz on television with all the paranormal shows and things like that have popped up. And now it seems to be this big push on demonology. I think everybody who wants to go out, instead of bumping into a ghost, they want to bump into a demon, which, bless you, go out and do that yourself. There's no way. I wouldn't go to psych wards. I wouldn't go to places where there might be damaged energy, because I just don't really want to put myself into that position for a paranormal investigation that I could do, and it can be just as active in a restaurant locally. And I've had really good evidence come out of just a very, very public restaurant. And so why go into these asylums? And why, for goodness sakes, are people buying these asylums and putting a bar in them and then charging someone $300 to have a few beer and go on a paranormal investigation and rattle the cage of a bunch of poor spirits that are trapped? That really ticks me off. That's what you should write a book about. Jim is mad because...
Would it be a long book?
Actually, not that bad. I rant on a couple of things, so, but I could be long because I ran for a long time, so that's okay. You're in your area now, and as an author, and I'm looking at a lot of the books that you've written. They are they kind of it goes back to you as a military spouse. And that, if you, from your experience and from the work with other people, people possibly suffering from, have you ever run into a lot or counsel people suffering from post-traumatic stress, or do you talk to people who maybe is the wife of somebody who's come back with post-traumatic stress?
My husband actually came back with it. There was a lot of weird events, and there was, the military was with us all throughout it, from counselors to medical help. I think in some form or fashion, I think every soldier comes back with it, whether it be a little bit or a lot. I come from a big military family, and my dad just retired from the Army a couple months ago. And my grandpa was in the Navy and my uncle was in the Marines, and I've got 3 brothers that were in the Army. And they all have their own experiences. My main area of helping families was helping them getting ready for deployment. I had been through it so much in my life that, it was just kind of a natural thing. The Oklahoma National Guard shipped out, and it was the first big deployment of the Oklahoma National Guard. I don't remember how long they said it was. I mean, it was Vietnam, I believe, or something like that. And there was thousands of families that had never experienced this, and they had, they were they were scared. They were, concerned. They had no idea what was coming. And I volunteered to help those families get ready for deployment. I was with them from the moment our soldiers came home. And we actually ran an operation to get those soldiers to come back for Christmas because they had been away at training in another state.
Oh, you're fading away again.
We actually had a surprise homecoming visit for Christmas. The soldiers had been away for training a couple of states over while they prepared for Iraq. And we actually raised the funds to bring a couple thousand soldiers home for Christmas so they could see their families before they deployed overseas. And it was an amazing feeling to know that we brought these guys back for, I think it was 7 days. And Love's, the company, the gas station company, actually donated the gas, and Greyhound donated the buses, and so many people pulled together. I mean, it was amazing how well it worked. And I actually wrote a book called Behind the Ranks, and it is written for the Army. There's a few FRGs, which is a family readiness group, that supply it to their wives to help prepare them to get through deployment. And it takes them from day one to the last day and everything in between. And it talks to them about, what to do, what not to do, and being home alone and everything in between. And I know of quite a few family readiness groups that use that. And, it makes me feel good knowing that I've helped a little bit.
And when you say you've helped a little bit, you little Dickens, you've helped a lot more than you thought. And I think it's awesome. And I thank you on behalf of people who have worked in these situations. I suffered post-traumatic stress too, and I've bounced all over this country. A lot of the Mounties I've worked with have been deployed overseas, whether it's Afghanistan, Namibia, Morocco, Haiti, and some have lost their lives over there. So I thank you for the service you give to those families that have our loved one is going overseas to a lot of times the unknown. And again, and I also like to thank you for dropping by tonight. And it was great talking to you. And again, I want my listener to go to authoraspringer.com. Again, that's authoraspringer.com. And look up stuff to do with Amanda, and look at all these books that she's been writing, and which includes Behind the Ranks, the book she was just talking about. Lots of books, Amanda. And again, thanks for your service, and thank you very much for coming on Spaced Out Weekend.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, you are welcome anytime. You're scary, but you're welcome anytime. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to tonight's edition of Spaced Out Weekend. To reach Jim on Facebook, you can give our Spaced Out Radio Show a like. You can follow Jim on Twitter at James Tyson SOR, and follow Spaced Out Weekend on our website, spacedoutradio.com. Now, for the final time tonight, here's James Tyson.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing and they go, what are those voices? Look up for the mountain. Somebody hide, somebody better hide. And through the hail, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or get you dead or alive. It's all the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun